Yeah, we're going to talk about Dagger 012. We were hoping to release it today, but I think it's going to be maybe later today or possibly tomorrow. We don't want to rush it, but definitely this week. And I'm happy to report that the focus this time is not some big giant feature that we're rushing to get out like we've been doing for the last few months. If you remember Dagger functions, modules, Daggerverse, traces. This time we're focusing on polish and quality, which I think everyone using it and will agree that we needed to spend that time. So I think it's already starting to pay off. So I'm going to go through a list of the highlights, and some of those have demos, others don't, and then hopefully there'll be time for questions and all that good stuff. So um, the first really exciting feature, honestly, this is like Christmas come early, is interactive debugging. I think that's probably the most requested feature. At least it was for a while. Probably the longest requested feature, at least a year that people started asking for it. And the idea is sometimes you just want to pop a shell somewhere in the pipeline and see what's going on. And now you can. That's really, that's it, really. Um, I could go on, but it's better to just show you. So let me just pass on to Andrea, the mastermind behind this amazing feature. You ready,
Sure.
Andrea?
Yep. Yep. Let me share my screen. Okay. This around.
And everyone, don't forget to chat and react in the Discord channel. We're in general having a good time. GIFs, emojis, go for it.
Okay, great. So with O12, there's a set of new features related to debugging. So let me start with the first one. It's not really a new feature, but it's a change to the existing one, which is the terminal API. So here's an example of a very simple pipeline that creates an Alpine container and then runs a command inside. As you can see, there's this improved terminal API that allows me to basically pop open a terminal at any point in the timeline. So for instance, here I'm attaching a terminal right before the exec and after the exec. So let me call this one. So I'm going to call my function. And first you can see that the first terminal was just opened right after the container from Alpine. So since this is creating like a foo file, I can check and foo doesn't exist yet. So I'm exiting. So at this point here, I'm exiting. What's going to happen is that the next instruction is getting executed, the exec. And after this, I have the terminal. So I can see this terminal reattached after the exec. And if I check, now I do have a foo available here. So this allows to set arbitrary breakpoints anywhere in a container pipeline. You can basically terminal gets a container, returns a container. So you can just chain it however you like. There's a similar feature available, similar change to directory now. So as you can see, I have a very simple example, clone the Dagger repo, um, and grab the README file. Except at this point, I'm inserting a terminal right after cloning the repo. So let me call Dagger dir. Okay. And here you can see a terminal is getting attached, as mentioned here, like right after the tree. So inside basically that directory. If I look around here, you could recognize the Dagger repo. So look around, it must be README file. Okay. README file. Since this is not a container, what happens is that it actually creates a new container with by default, it uses like an Alpine image and mounts the directory inside and sets that to the current working directory. So you can play around with the directory. That is overridable. Like you can pass a custom container if you want, like, I don't know, a full-fledged Ubuntu container. You can just pass that to the terminal as an option. Okay, so that's it for the terminal API itself, which allows you to basically set breakpoints in your pipeline. But sometimes you don't you don't want to like modify the pipeline. Maybe it's happening like to a module you're calling, it's just failing, and you want a terminal open there. So here's an example of a fail command. So similar to the previous example, we're starting from Alpine, and then we are executing like this command, like hello world into a file. And here I have a typo. I'm doing a cat of hello, but like I messed up the capitalization at the end. So if I call fail, as usual, this is just gonna fail. Like that's the behavior you get with the 011. Although now you have a flag -i or dash interactive, which basically instructs the engine to pop up in a terminal anytime a command fails. So let me try this.
What?
Okay, and you can see my exact fail attaching terminal. I get a backtrace to know like exactly where it failed. So I can see that it failed after from Alpine, sh. And now the last instruction was cat tmp hello. And you can see like the process cat temp hello failed. So I can look inside temp and see, oh, actually there's a typo. The file is named hello, whereas I'm looking at hello with a capital O. So if I can cat around and I can actually see that this is my file and actually worked as expected. And when I exit, it just continues as usual. And yeah, that's it for debugging. So we saw the new terminal API that works both for containers and directories. And then we have auto attachment failure. That's optional whenever you pass the -- interactive flag to Dagger. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, now I realize maybe it was a mistake to start with this demo. Yeah, I can already tell you this feature has saved me like several times just in the last 48 hours. Um, so I know you're going to enjoy it. Let me share my screen again. Boom. Okay. So that was interactive debugging. And it really adds a delightful twist to just the day-to-day process of using Dagger. When you use Dagger a lot, it just comes in, it's just magical. Anyway, continuing with the trend of magical experience, we've done a lot of UI polish here. And so there's two parts to the Dagger UI now. There's a terminal UI and there's a web UI. And together they're one of the killer features of Dagger, I would say, because you can visualize your Dagger pipelines as they run in a trace view, right? We've been just spending a lot of time, and especially Alex and Julian, improving both in parallel and also improving the integration between them. So we're going to get two demos here, one for the terminal improvements and one for the web improvements of this trace view. And who should go first?
Yeah, so there's been a slew of updates to both the TUI and the web UI. I'll be focusing mostly on the trace page. There's a bunch of other updates for the CI view, which I'll let Julian cover later. But for now, we'll drive this with the new TUI. So problems with the previous TUI. Sometimes it would get really slow if you're viewing like a very large trace, for example, our integration tests. And also before something went off screen, you were kind of just out of luck. It would just crop. Part of the reason that they're both related, before it would basically render the entire trace and then just crop it to fit the viewport, which was slow and annoying because that meant you're paying the cost of rendering all the things that you can't see anyway. But now what you can do is actually navigate around with arrow keys or with scrolling, all the things you usually expect. If you're seeing flickering here, sorry about that. Windows Terminal is like fast enough to keep up with the new performance, so we need like better synchronization for rendering. But yeah, so you can move around with arrow keys. You can move, so like going right will take you to the nested child if there is one, and then going left will pop you up, so you can like sort of go all the way up. Another thing you can do is so you'll notice that there's a bunch more kind of crud showing on the screen right now. That's because we default to a higher verbosity, which if you have opinions on that, I'm going to send you to this comment because we just recently made it a little more verbose by default. because we had a few folks asking like, where'd all the progress go when it exited? But nice thing is you can just press minus and then you'll have it be trimmed down to only things that are running, which is what it did before. I noticed someone requested HJKL, and I have good news for you because it's already implemented. It just doesn't show up on the key map. They do the same thing as arrow keys. Yeah, I think that's it for movement. There's also home end, which, yeah, take you to the very beginning, very end. Someday we'll support GG. I know Justin wanted to ask to add that. And then also, sorry, jumping around a bit, you might notice it kind of might be hard to see in the terminal, but before this exec go test span would actually show up in some kind of random area. It would actually show up under sync. But now there's a new feature called accounting for whatever reason, where it just kind of keeps track of where the causes and effects are and shows the effects near their cause instead. So now you can see go test is beneath the go test. If I go into that by pressing enter, you might have also seen we have this W web key, which when I press that, should open the browser. And because we zoomed into the span, it should not only open it in cloud, but open it zoomed into the span. So now you can see the same go test output that I'm seeing at the right. If I were to zoom out, that would just bring me to the top level, which I'll press it, but I'm just going to close this because it does what you would expect. I'll let it render. I guess I'll jump over to Web UI because this is demonstrating something right now. You might notice this flame chart is flashing. Previously, there was a kind of performance issue with the Web UI where it would actually wait to load up everything before it rendered anything. Now it'll actually render as soon as it receives the first 1,000 spans, and then it'll render incrementally from there. So the time until first actually seeing something useful should be much lower now. Yeah, that's Web UI key. And so I'll show a bit more of improvements to cloud while I'm here. One small thing that was very annoying before was these little links. You couldn't actually middle click them because they were just like elements with a click event. Now, anytime you see these little buttons, you can just middle click them, do whatever you would normally want to do with a link. Minor thing, but super annoying paper cut before. Another thing is you can actually select text in Chrome. This was just a silly like event propagation cancellation. Also, this doesn't select line numbers. So yeah, just more things in line with polish in the Web UI. Now, if I go back over here, another thing you can do is previously you would click these little pill things and it would jump you to the span that ran it, which was kind of useful, but also kind of jarring. Now it'll actually just expand to reveal the recipe in place. And then if you want, you can jump from here to the span. This way you can sort of quickly see like what's the full object that was passed into here. This works recursively, so you can see like there's a file in here and you can, yeah, just kind of see the full object being passed around. Another thing is the same thing I mentioned for the Web UI where you'll see go test is beneath with exec instead of being beneath sync. And with exec will have, this actually worked before too, but it'll show the duration, including its asynchronous calls. Okay, quickly checking my list to make sure I've covered everything. If there are any questions in chat, I guess I'll scan that too.
Just lots and lots of emojis.
Okay, good. Okay, yeah. I'll move on to future plans then. One area that's still not that great is when something fails, which I probably won't be able to demo because this test takes too long. This is like most of our integration tests. When things fail, right now it prints like the big tree view of everything with like the log sort of inline and like indented with the little pipe character in front of it, which is pretty annoying. I'm working on making it sort of intelligently promote errors to the top level so they won't be indented, so you can more easily copy paste or just like quickly scan and see what the error output is. So that's coming soon. I also want to implement the same key map in cloud. That way you can sort of, switch between them really easily. I want to be able to like press, I guess, home and end, do what you would expect. But yeah, just more sort of integration between the two. And also maybe implementing this in the TUI too. It might look something like selecting a span and then tabbing over to objects in it and pressing enter. I'm not sure, but like being able to inspect recipes in the TUI would be pretty neato too. Yeah, I think that's it. I'm doing a quick check.
Did you mention the asynchronous support? Andrea just made a note of that we show the asynchronous work close to the moment you made the query for it.
Yeah, I think I demoed that already.
Yep.
And apparently my hard drive just ran out of space, so I'm gonna cautiously back away from doing further demos. But yeah, that cause effect tracking is what I called that, or accounting, or async work.
Yep.
We probably need a proper name for it. But yeah, general idea is not so much reflect the technical reality of what's going on with like lazy evaluation, because usually the call site that requires something to be unlazied is vastly less interesting than the site that introduced the work that became lazy. It'll probably take a few iterations, so if you see something that seems a little wonky about it, let me know. It's like the paint is fresh. So I'll stop now and hand off to whoever's next.
I think Julian, right?
Is he a meeting?
Yep.
Okay, cool. I'll stop sharing.
Hello, everyone. That was awesome. I've been working closely with Alex, and the work he's been doing has been incredible. I've been working on another part of the UI. I'm gonna share my screen real quickly. So here, what you're seeing basically is a new CI view, which is different from the local view that Alex was showing. This is the previous page. We made some adjustments basically to be able to browse traces that are running in a context that is not in your machine. So the question that basically arose from the first time was what data can we gather from our environments that provides a way to quickly browse traces? And we actually had like this dichotomy between using either Git metadata, which is generally available in a CI context, or the other approach was basically leveraging environment-specific variables, like, for example, GitHub environment variables or Jenkins environment variables. And we came up with this view, which is called CI, which actually grabs a little bit of both, mostly trying to group traces with both approaches. One is a mixture of environment variables from a specific context, and the other is from Git metadata. And we are trying to leverage more on Git because it's basically more portable. It will allow us to gather more information that will be available in all different contexts. So what I prepared here was basically two different visualizations, two actually tiny demos. One is with Jenkins. Here I'm running a local Jenkins server, which is actually pulling a Jenkins file from a repo. And what that Jenkins file is doing, if I enter, for example, this field here, and I go to the console output, this Jenkins file is pulling two different repositories. Not in this case. Why not? Oh, because I'm in another branch, sorry. This Jenkins file is actually pulling a repository, and is sending telemetry to Dagger Cloud because the engine is understanding the context it's running on, Jenkins specifically, and is sending the information from the branch it's running on and the ref, the commit ref. So here we're going to see in CI that we have a run, actually a group of different traces that run inside that context, both in Jenkins here inside a repository, the main branch, and in this commit. And here you have the author of this commit that triggered this trace. this group of traces actually. The thing is, going back to what I mentioned before, sometimes it's different. It's hard to manage the context that something is happening on. So there are a few caveats, and there is maybe a specific environment where you don't have the Git metadata properly set, or the CI environment is not properly set for us, so we cannot properly send telemetry. So for now, we have what we call orphan traces, in case this is not working, where we show traces that we know that run in CI, but we cannot group them. We don't know where to actually put them in that view. And this is something that we've been working on for the last few weeks. This is something that we are still iterating on. And it's basically a way for you to find traces and for you to work with Dagger Cloud more closely as you are, for example, developing features for your application. Because here you will have, for example, as you can see, multiple providers and multiple repositories in the same view. So with the same Dagger Cloud token, you will be able to see all the work that's happening across your whole organization, not your cloud organization necessarily, but your whole organization and cross-team efforts in the same view. We, for the future, we're looking into working on top of this, like, for example, being able to filter by repository, being able to focus a specific branch and look up all the commits under that branch. And yep, that's basically it. And that's the work that we've been doing this past few weeks. I don't know if you have any questions in the chat, or should I hand it to someone else?
We've got Justin saying that they love the Jenkins logo.
It's actually really cool because Jenkins has a lot of logos. If you go to the Jenkins page and you see the artwork they have a lot of different Jenkins logos. It's actually something nice. I'm going to paste the link in the chat.
Thanks, Julian. I'll just add that this last topic of mapping the right Git metadata and grouping the CI traces together in the right way, it's tricky to get right, but it's really worth it. Because it gives it gives you a lot of freedom to manage your pipeline's logic separately from CI, and that's kind of the dream of Dagger, right? CI gradually becomes an implementation detail, so we're slowly but surely making progress towards that. Okay. No questions at the moment. Let me continue. So now, after interactive debugging and UI polish, we move on to the ability to host modules on any Git server. So the context for that is, in theory, modules can live anywhere because they're just code. So any Git server will do. In practice, it was possible, but not super practical unless you were on GitHub. So GitHub was sort of a favorite. And now we don't like playing favorites. We like openness and choice. And so now we're opening the floodgates to all the Git servers out there. And to demo that, we have Lev and Guillaume.
Hey, everybody. I'm really excited to share all the work that Guillaume has been doing. He is amazing, and this is wonderful. So up until now, if you wanted to share your Dagger module with the world, you had two choices. One, you could put it on github.com in a public repo, or two, you could point to it in a local directory, and that was basically it. And starting now, anytime you see a Dagger JSON on any public Git server in the world, you could just go ahead and try to install it and see what happens, and it will probably and very likely work. So as an example, here I have a private Dagger module that creates like a Debian builder that I can use for packaging purposes, that's hosted on Debian's Debian's public instance of GitLab that they're self-hosting. So I can go grab that repo and say Dagger install by URL, and it will go ahead and do exactly the same thing that's always done with GitHub, but now it actually works with GitLab. So that's wonderful. And just to kind of prove the point further, we can do the same thing with other VCSs. So here I have a MongoDB module that is hosted on SourceHut, which is a indie VCS platform that supports Git and one-day Mercurial. So I'm excited. It supports Git and Mercurial. So one day I'm excited to show off the Dagger Mercurial version as well. But here I can do the same exact thing and install the SourceHut Dagger module. And that'll work. And just kind of keep going. You can do the same exact thing with Git T. And I challenge people to find any other VCS that exists in the world that supports Git and just try to install Dagger modules from there. It should just work. So it works exactly the same way as every other module. When you run install, what it'll do is it'll add that reference to your Dagger JSON file. And then from that point on, you can manage it just like you would any other Dagger module. But the real cool part about all this, in my opinion, is that this actually also just works with Daggerverse. So if I were to search for that MongoDB module that I just installed, you will see it. And it's pointing to SourceHut. So all this just magically works out of the box for any public VCS that supports Git. And then just as a little teaser, very, very soon, once this PR is merged, we will also support private Git repos as well. So huge shout out to Guillaume for all the wonderful work that's went into this. Thank you.
Do it, Lev. Just click the merge button. Do it. I love how it just worked out of the box on Daggerverse. I feel like we can find even weirder, more niche Git services out there. And have a special prize for the weirdest. I'll leave it to the other panelists. If you see any questions, just interrupt me at any time, okay? Okay, so that was modules on any Git server. And Lev mentioned, for now it's on any public Git server, but private Git servers, in other words, private support for private modules is coming very soon. We know that's a very, very requested feature. We're working on it. It's coming. We promise. I see you, Nipuna. We've got you. We've got your back. Okay, so after interactive debugging, UI polish on terminal and web, and modules on any Git server, now we go to better corporate network support, the sexiest topic of all. So we don't have a demo for this one. I'll give a quick summary, and then we can move on, or if I say something really stupid or in more detail, Eric can probably jump in if he's here. But basically, we discovered that people run Dagger in all sorts of places, and a lot of those places have restrictions on their network, things like corporate proxies, custom certificate authorities, anything all the way to air-gapped networks. And I'm not going to say we support all of them perfectly now, but we've made a lot of progress. And in particular, now you can customize the Dagger engine to support corporate proxies and inject custom certificate authorities. Those are the two main improvements here, and we got more coming. Eventually, we hope to support fully air-gapped networks. At the moment, we do not, but this addresses a lot of the most pressing concerns for people who just want to take Dagger to production, and this is the network they have. They can't change it. And that's it. Eric, anything I forgot or any detail you want to add?
One kind of neat thing is that, so this applies to the engine's like built-in operations, like when you're pulling Git repos and pulling container engines and stuff, but it also applies to the containers you spin up. So we'll, for proxies, always set those proxy settings that you put on the engine in your containers too, which is really nice because if your container is talking to some external service, it probably needs the exact same settings. And it's really annoying and not maintainable to go and update all your containers with those settings. So yeah, we went out of our way to do that. And we also do that for certificate authorities on a best effort basis too. Yeah, so it's probably worth mentioning.
I didn't realize that. That's really cool. Yeah, I generally, I think some of these features that you would seem so obvious that you almost wonder why they didn't ship on day one, it turns out it's surprisingly hard to do it correctly all the way down. And we'd rather get it right than rush something and then regret it. In this case, I think it's 3 different places that you need to support these proxies and certificates in, right? There's the Dagger CLI that's running on your machine, the engine that's running in a container, maybe on your machine, or maybe on a VM somewhere else. And then, like you mentioned, the container itself. I guess if you want to count the SDKs that are building your container runtime, that's a 4th place. So
yeah, those are supported too. Yeah,
it's complicated, and once we say it's supported, we support all of it. So pretty awesome. Can the containers opt out of the proxy? Nipuna asks.
Right now, you can explicitly on the containers unset the variables. So I guess that's actually a good question though. We could we could definitely make that a little bit easier. Like if you just want it on the engine and say never set this on any containers, it's possible today, but you would have to like explicitly set HTTP proxy is empty string, which we could definitely make that a little better because that does sound a little annoying. Good question.
There you go. Feature request on the fly.
Yeah.
And Alex makes a good point that what we're saying about a lot of non-obvious details that require taking time to get it right for corporate network environments also applies to Git server support. There's a lot of edge cases there. And my wild guess is this is also why we didn't rush to merge private module support because it's tricky to get it right. But we will. Okay, thanks, Eric. So now we're moving on to the next item, which is compatibility mode. So I'm very excited about this one. Doesn't really lend itself to an exciting demo, but trust me, it is an exciting feature. And if you have any operational experience, you will appreciate this. So we've taken the time to, and by we, definitely not me, but a special shout out to Justin and Eric and anyone else who's worked on this. But as of 0.12, the Dagger engine has support for backwards compatibility baked in, so that when it loads a module, and not just your module, but also that module's dependencies, right? Any module, that module can declare what engine version it is known to work with. So you can target an older engine version. And in theory, there are no breaking changes ever. So it doesn't matter what version of the engine your module targets. But in the real world, especially in the early phases of a fast moving platform like Dagger, that's just not realistic. There's going to be some breaking changes. And actually I have a slide about the breaking changes later. And we're very careful, and we try to be responsible with breaking changes. We try not to break things for the sake of breaking, but things will break. And then you have a tension between the desire to keep things stable and compatible and the desire to get cool new features and keep moving fast, right? And so compatibility mode is a way to sort of get our cake and eat it too. Basically, you can upgrade your engine, and even if some of your dependencies do not yet support, they have not been upgraded to work with the latest version of the engine, it will still work because newer engine will detect that and simulate older engines on the fly. That's the idea. So in theory, if we fully take advantage of this, you have perfect backwards compatibility as you upgrade. You still need to upgrade your modules if you want to take advantage of new features of your newer engines, because there's no per feature granularity, right? You want to keep the old behavior, you also keep the old lack of features. But we actually have a plan in the future to go even further and have per feature granularity, right? Doesn't really justify the extra overhead right now, but we will get to it eventually. Android does something kind of similar. Anyway, that's compat mode, super powerful, and comes in handy because we do have a few breaking changes, nothing enormous, but we do have a few. and your modules may be affected by them, but you'll still be able to upgrade and things will just work. So that's the summary. If Justin, if you're here, or Eric, if there's anything I forgot or any detail you want to add, or if what I said is actually wrong, now's the time to say it. Is Justin here? Oh, maybe he's busy releasing.
I'm here, but yeah, you got it all pretty much.
I just want to add that I'm very proud of the fact that we have this kind of feature already shipping so early, because usually I think a lot of platforms learn the hard way, and then they retrofit this a couple of years in, and it's just way more painful. So I'm not going to say there's not going to be any pain, but yeah, I think we're building an important foundation here. So, and the message here is we care about compatibility, we care about stability and things like that, but we want to get our cake and eat it too. We also want to keep adding features and move fast because there's a lot of stuff we still want to ship. So that's the plan. Any questions that I missed in the chat on this? I don't see any. I'll just move on. Interrupt me at any time. Okay, Enum Support. So this is a feature that Tom contributed. He's not here today, but the short version is now the Dagger API. Well, the Dagger API and all the major SDKs support custom enumeration types. So now in your modules, you can have functions that return or take as argument an enumeration type. Type with a specific list of possible values. And that's supported under the hood by GraphQL. So we just set up the plumbing to take advantage of that. Very convenient. You should use it. Okay. Now, a huge amount of work went into reliability and performance. A lot of this actually has shipped gradually in patch releases of 0.11. Some of you who have been out there running Dagger in ambitious, sometimes dare I say ridiculous production environments are acutely aware of it, because these patch releases are the result of you running into problems and reporting them, and then us together tracking down those sometimes very difficult to track down problems, and then extracting the patch. And one production issue at a time, we're making the engine more reliable and faster for everyone. And we've been doing that in a very focused and we've been doing it very painstakingly for a couple of months now, and it's starting to really pay off. So Gerhardt's going to give us a demo of the results and the process that got us there.
So this is a sort of feature that, as if we haven't shipped enough feature, right? As if the team isn't busy shipping amazing features, responding to issues, helping everyone. There's always at least one of these, which is a really long running one. It's very hard to pin down. It's very hard to understand what the problem is. You just have maybe inconsistent behavior, or things are taking too long. And it takes months to get to the bottom of it, because actually it's not one issue. It's many issues in different layers. And the way they compose results in behaviors that are unexpected and very hard to explain. So this is like the sort of behavior that series of behaviors that we have been dealing with for months now, exactly as Solomon said. So this is a public issue that you can see, 7339. And this talks about an inconsistent behavior in our own test suite. That's how this started. So basically, sometimes the tests complete within 15 minutes, and sometimes they time out after 30 minutes. Very hard to understand what is going on. Sometimes they succeed and sometimes they fail, but nothing changed about the actual setup. The operating system is the same, the resources are the same, the networking is the same, the hardware is the same, everything is the same. So that's how this started. Okay, and we set on a journey to investigate, to figure out what is going on and where. So this was beginning of May. A week later, we had more details, and this is also another public issue, 7387, that you can go and check out, see what's there. This is in the Dagger repo. And you can see, start seeing the level of detail that we had to go to just to understand what is happening where, starting with the CLI, going into the engine itself, going into other systems, right? We're looking at Go code, and soon we'll be looking at C code, but this goes on and on and on and on. There's like a lot of detail here, okay? And again, this is just the beginning, tip of the iceberg. So as we move through, right, we have users reporting June 10th. Do we have a Mark in the audience?
Not
Looking
Dagger.
at chat. No, he hasn't joined today. Okay, that's okay. So he'll watch the recording. So Mark reported, hey, things are timing out. What's going on? Like, what's the problem? This is my version. This is 11.6. What's going on? So we talked about this for a little while, and I'm very curious to know if things got fixed for Mark, because we haven't heard anything since. So we'll follow up on that. However, that led to a flurry of things, even before and even after. So again, if you just look, this is actually a pull request, 7452. And there's a lot of detail here. Again, a lot of discussions, and this is just one of many. I'll go through the rest a bit quicker, but I think now we get to see the end result. So what does the end result look like? So I have on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, I have 11.7. And this just shows a certain behavior. And this is running on the left-hand side, so off it goes. And on the right-hand side, I have running the very dev version of Dagger, which was built of the main branch just before this call. So this is very, very fresh. And we're running the same two tests in parallel. The hosts are slightly different, but they're very similar in terms of number of CPUs, number of memory, network, and VME disk, all that stuff. If anything, the biggest difference is the CPU, but for this, it doesn't matter because these workloads aren't CPU bound. So we'll wait for the things to run. We'll come back to them, but I just want to keep going. So again, you can start seeing how this, for example, is a pull request to BuildKit. Very difficult one. Eric has been, sticking with it for a really long time, right? This started in April, even before our issue started. You can start seeing how there's like little events that happen at different periods of time and they all come together, and then we have to basically pull on various threads. So this was a very interesting one. Again, it got merged in May 31st. Was this released, by the way, Eric? Do you know if this is a released BuildKit version?
Yeah, I believe so. Yep.
Okay. So this is now out, so everyone benefits, but that's using BuildKit. But this just goes to show that it goes beyond just Dagger, right? It just goes into other projects. So moving on, another one, another Eric, actually the same Eric. But again, there's like a lot of detail here as well. And even like this is maybe not the best one, but this one, there was like one which was really, really long. I forget which one. Like lots of discussions just to get to the point where things are working. Removing shim. Oh, this is a big one. So all of these have been shipping. This is, for example, 11.5, even before. Little improvements that have shipped over many, many months that have made things better, have been chipping away at the problem. I think this is the big one that I was looking for. Like the amount of detail here is amazing. Cool. So moving on. And basically all you see is like a small patch and you think, oh, this is nice. But actually, like some of these, they go really, really deep. This is another great one. Session cleanup and simplifications also, Eric. And there's Justin, Alex. Oh, this is one of my favorites. Why? Because it's visual, right? You can finally see what the hell is happening. There's like a visual representation of before and after. And I think this is one of the best things if you're into profiling, just to understand what is happening. So before, 23 seconds, after 3 seconds, right? That's all that you have to remember, right? Two different profiles before and after this pull request, and it just makes everything so much better. There's another one, and by the way, these haven't shipped yet. So this is in 12. I think this was also a version 12. Yeah, so this is in the release that is still to come, right? That's the imminent release that we're all talking about. So 12 improvement, and another 12 improvement. And we even went like to detail, like to understand what is happening in the actual kernel. So this is another great session. I think this was in 1 month ago. So another one that's like some improvements going in a couple of layers, and some of them aren't even Dagger. Anyway, the end result, all of that. Before, it took 54 seconds, and now it's taking 36 seconds. Okay, so that's basically one of the improvements in one of our test suites. What's hard to capture is how stable this is, right, over time. And, even though we are adding more test suites, things are just improving, and we still have a bunch of things to go through, but we're very, very close to getting in a very good place for us and for everyone else that's using Dagger. So thank you everyone that contributed. Back to you, Solomon.
It's pretty amazing to see the amount of work that goes into this. And sometimes you wonder, is this amount of engineering effort for this little output really worth it? But then it's not just that little output, really, right? It kind of compounds, and there's a deeper effect that eventually pays off. So we're going to be talking about reliability and performance a whole lot still this year, because we do want to release a 1.0 version eventually, and this is our first meaningful step towards it. So stay tuned for more on that. Okay, so this is the part where I warn you that there are API changes. I don't think we should read through all of these, but the release notes will mention all of these. Some of these are technically breaking changes, but we're confident will affect pretty much no one. Others may definitely affect you, but should be an easy fix. Like, okay, you got to change a line of code here, a line of code there. There's no major API refactoring. These are all corrections, small individual changes, but still something to look out for. And also remember, compat mode will kick in, so that should help. Maybe a few highlights. I don't know if Helder, Eric, Justin, anyone else, if there's one of those that you want to highlight, now's the time.
Maybe the thing about the entry points. There's two.
Oh, yeah.
There's the skip entry points by default, and the SED out no longer use it, falling back to the default commit.
Yeah. Yeah, a few of these have to do with some edge cases around the what's the best way to describe it? Yeah, the interaction between Dagger's API for containers and the OCI spec for container images. And since BuildKit at its core does not differentiate between an OCI image and a container, a runnable container, they're in Docker files, they're called stages. It's one and the same. We reuse that concept. So it's just a container. At any time, the container can be run and further modified, or it can be published or exported to a tarball, right? And so that means that one object, the container, is sort of both an image and a runnable thing, right? And I think 99% of the time that worked great, and the remaining 1%, there's some confusion or niche behavior that we get wrong. And one of those is the handling of entry points and default arguments. So it's called CMD in the Docker file. So we're making adjustments there. And in practice, that's going to affect you when, I guess the main one is we're going to ignore entry point from an image. So if you pull an image, container.from something with exec, you execute a command, that with exec by default will ignore the entry point. So you have to specify the full command, right? There's an optional argument to revert to the old behavior, but we recommend not using that. And generally, we recommend not relying on entry points unless it's for compatibility with other systems. So you can, but you shouldn't rely on it as a tool for abstracting what's going on, because the team that designed entry point and the concept of entry point is here working at Dagger. And the reason we design entry points is because we did not have something like Dagger. We didn't have a programmable engine. You could not express the abstractions as code. And so we did the best we could with these primitive abstractions instead. But if you got code, you don't need any of that. You just write code. And if you want to abstract away parts of your arguments, you just write a function that does that abstraction for you, right? So yeah, that's an example of a breaking change that may affect you, but as a one-liner to fix, and we think is worth it. I think that's it. You'll see the others. They're small, but yeah, making the most of compat mode. Okay. Got a few minutes to talk about the future and take questions. We don't have time to talk through all of these, but a few of the things we have coming. We have more stability and performance, more support for restricted network environments. We want to work on improving, the reference production architecture, the best way to run Dagger in Kubernetes, the best way to run Dagger in a clustering environment. We've got a really sweet one that's almost ready that Tom's been working on that I think we've been bike shedding and just arguing over the design for months, but now it's almost there. And that's what we call context directory. Actually, in several of the demos, including Gerhardt's just before, you see the Dagger call, the typical -- source dot. And actually -- source dot plus maybe colon something. So you got this kind of verbose argument in your command, and you always have to pass the source directory explicitly always. And there's a good reason for that. That way your function, is fully sandboxed. It cannot receive anything from your machine, can't access anything on your machine without being explicitly passed in. So it's more repeatable, it's more safe, all that good stuff, because it's in a sandbox. But it's a little more repetitive to pass everything explicitly. Really, do I really need to pass in the source every time for my build? I just want to build. Obviously, this is what I want to build. So we added implicit access to the current context directory. So you'll be able to write a function that can, by default, access the logical directory to access. So out of the box, you'll be able to call these functions and not have to type -- source every time. It's going to be really nice. Private Git modules, we talked about that. Cache control is going to be really nice. Right now, when you call Dagger functions, that's actually not cached. All the core calls made by the functions are cached the usual way, but the function itself is not. And that kind of adds up. And so we're going to enable caching of those by default, and also control over whether or not your function is cached, and maybe things like TTLs. So everything is going to get faster, basically. We want to ship a standard library of modules, on top of the existing Daggerverse, something that's a trusted place. Okay, we know these modules are reliable, they're stable, etc. Better support for shell scripting, lots of polish, and more. Oh, I forgot to bring your own storage. It should be in there. Yeah, thank you, Vincent. Yeah, so we definitely are. Actually, that is one of the biggest items right now. We want to solve the problem of distributed caching, which is actually when we talk about a better production architecture, that actually goes hand in hand with fixing distributed caching, because basically we want the Dagger engine to be stateless. Once the Dagger engine can be stateless, you can start decoupling storage from compute, and then a lot of great things can happen, and everything becomes easier to scale. That's the goal. But to get to that goal, we need to. Oh, you're right. It's there. I see it now. It's. I missed on the text. I thought you just guessed, but you actually saw it with your laser eyes. It's written in black instead of white. So yeah, that's the big blocker for a better production architecture. A way for the engine to use your favorite storage service, whether it's S3 or some other object storage, locally to your engines, to coordinate the movement of caching data across a whole cluster of engines, and just somehow have that work seamlessly. It's another one of those really hard to get right things, but that's a super high priority right now. So it is coming, and it will unblock a lot of great stuff, especially in production. And more SDKs. We actually have a bunch of SDKs that are pretty much feature complete or almost feature complete, but are not officially supported because they're not developed by the core Dagger team. They're developed by our awesome community. There's a Rust SDK, there's a PHP SDK, there's a Java and .NET SDK that are making a lot of progress. And so at some point we're gonna have to take that jump and either declare them to be fully supported or have some sort of lower tier where, okay, maybe it's not as supported as the 3 core ones, but it's pretty supported. Something between flagship, core, stable, and you got to go find it somewhere in the depths of the Git repository. So that's also coming. And by the way, a big thank you to everyone in the community that has been contributing to these SDKs. I forgot Elixir also. Yeah, y'all are awesome. That's very appreciated.